Okay. I think we are all ready to go. All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for attending our artist talk tonight. My name is Christina, and I am Factory Media Center's Operations Coordinator. Before we begin, I would like to take the time to acknowledge that the land of present-day Hamilton is situated on the shared ancestral lands of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg, including the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg to peacefully care, share, and preserve the resources around the Great Lakes for years to come. As a not-for-profit artist-run center, the factory is committed to active ongoing reconciliation in collaboration with Indigenous peoples in our community. If you're also interested in getting involved with this type of work, you can check out what's currently going on at 1492 Landback Lane, about 20 minutes away from Hamilton. The land defenders are currently defending treaty land from developers and collecting donations to help towards bail funds, and occasionally they ask for donation for supplies as well. We'll paste a donation link in the chat if you would like to learn more. If you haven't heard of Factory Media Center, we're a media arts resource in Hamilton, Ontario. We host exhibitions, screenings, provide multimedia equipment, studio space, and skill development workshops for local artists and independent filmmakers, or anyone interested in digital media. We also host an annual residency program, which you'll learn more about a little bit later. But before I begin, I would like to thank our funders, the Insight Foundation for the Arts, City of Hamilton, Ontario Arts Council, and Canada Council for the Arts for making our programs possible. I would also like to thank our programming assistants, T. Kundu and John Hill, and our board member, Jessica Rodriguez, for making tonight's event possible through coordination support, live stream support. Everything wouldn't be possible without all the faces working behind the scenes over here. And finally, I would now like to introduce our January to March artist in residence, Claire Scherzinger. Claire has a BFA in drawing and painting and creative writing from OCAD University and an MFA in interdisciplinary arts from the University of Victoria. Her work has appeared in exhibitions across Canada and internationally in the US and UK. She was a Purchase Prize winner of the 2015 Royal Bank of Canada funded painting competition and was a finalist for the Equitable Bank Emerging Digital Artist Award. She was also the host of the Art Interview Series podcast, Overly Dedicated, from 2017 to 2019, and is the creator behind the sci-fi audio drama ARCA 45672 with support from the University of Victoria. Her work can be found in the RBC and EQ permanent collections. Factory Media Center's And Now Residency is an opportunity for artists to create a new body of work or spend time elaborating on an existing body of work. And tonight's artist talk by Claire will go into further detail about her project. I'm going to pass it off to you now, Claire. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Christina. Thank you, Jessica. Thanks to T and John for all the wonderful support over the past couple of months. I can't even begin to say how much I appreciate being selected for this residency and just having the space, the time, because we all want more space and time to make work. So I am especially grateful to have done this residency, and I would like to just say that I would highly recommend it to others. If you are a media artist and you are looking for an opportunity or residency, I definitely recommend you apply to this one when it is next available. So I'm going to be talking about a few things today, and in particular, the project that I have been working on. just hold with me for a minute here. I'm just going to share some things, mainly my screen. And I have my sound clicked, so great. Okay, so I am now sharing everything, and I'm just going to, yep, everything looks all right there. Okay, so let's go to my lovely PowerPoint. Okay. Wow. Yes, so this project is called The Floating Planets, and that's mostly what I'm going to talk to you about tonight, but I'm also going to talk about a couple of other things, and mainly my practice and what it is I do. And yeah, so you have this lovely image here that's actually a screen, just a still from the actual video project. This is another image. I have a couple stills actually from this project that I'll just be showing you. So this is one. This is one of the planets that I made in Unreal Engine and filmed inside of Unreal Engine, and then I was editing in Final Cut. So yeah, we'll talk about all the nitty-gritties in a little bit. I want to talk a little more about concept and just things that I've been thinking about over the last little while, but if you are just interested in the technical side, that will definitely come up as we go along. This is another still shot. I actually got rid of these like little plants in the front, and yeah, but so some things have changed just based on like what you're seeing in these stills here. But this is one of the main cities that I constructed in Unreal Engine and also filmed for the video project. Yeah, so now you've seen a couple of things. You've seen some images. You're starting to get a little idea, starting to get some thoughts percolating about what it is that is happening here. I just kind of want to maybe take a step back for a moment and lay a foundation for all of you about what it is I do before we really dive in deep. And so what I do, the main kind of center point of my practice is storytelling. And that seems like a very broad statement, mostly because it is. We're all kind of storytellers in our own way. I get that. But I'm really interested in more direct narratives. I know there's some might say like, okay, well, like, you know, there's like very kind of like a loose, there can be a loose sense of narrative in a work. There's narrative in painting. Novels are narratives. That's storytelling. Yes, and that is correct. That is all storytelling. That is all a form of that. Those are various forms of it. And that's great. I mostly really want to use this tool to talk about issues that are present in our current society and hopefully use this tool to become a better human being. So how do we do that? Well, in my practice in particular, I go about it doing world building. So when I talk about world building, I'm talking about just constructing a world from its bare bones, like what is the landscape like? What are the people, if there are people, what are they like? What is their economy like? Do they use money? How do they survive in their environment? These are all questions that I enjoy thinking about and gives me joy to think about on a daily basis, to construct these various spaces where anything might seem possible. In particular, I do this because world building is a tool that allows us to hold up a mirror to our current society and examine its failings, as I say in this lovely bullet point to the left, on the left side of the screen, or my left, how we might improve. Yeah, I think that's a really kind of succinct way of saying what it is I'm interested in. There's also endless space for hope and resistance. If we all kind of experience different levels of resistance on a daily basis, and I find that one of the best tools to deal with aspects of living in a late capitalist society is to imagine spaces that allow for freedom of movement and experiencing joy and just encountering hardships and finding ways to overcome it, and element like just writing about friendship and love. Those are all things that bring me joy and make me feel better about the world. So that's kind of those are the things I've been thinking about over the last number of years. And in particular, over the last, I guess I'd say 2 to 3 years, maybe 2.5 is a pretty good average. I've been making stories with gaming engines, and that's been pretty fun. You might be interested to know about me is I'm not a huge gamer. I you would think because I'm using a gaming engine, but I actually was not a huge gamer. I mean, I played online role-playing games when I was a teenager. For a lot of people, it was World of Warcraft. For me, it was Guild Wars. I played that a lot, and even my siblings did a fair bit at a certain point. What else did I play? I played Roller Coaster Tycoon when I was younger. I played, well, the biggest one was probably Civilization. That was a really big game at the time. It was like pretty new. And yeah, I think those were the big ones. So as I have become older, I actually haven't had a lot of time to game. The game that I play right now the most, when I do have time to play it, is Stardew Valley, which is like this amazing indie game that I think teaches really great values about sharing and talking with your neighbors and farming and community. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, I'm telling you all of this because I believe that games are a really fertile space. They're a fertile space to create art. They're a fertile space where there is, as I say in the next bullet point, boundless potential to teach millions of people digital literacy and impart important messages for the future. So that's a really big statement, but it is what I believe. I think that interacting with a tool or an immersive environment allows us a certain learning experience that we might not get just from looking at a two-dimensional painting. And I should say that I am also, like, I was originally a painter, and I'm coming from the background of a painter. I included a few slides of my paintings, actually, that I think we're going to get to in a minute, probably after this slide. So as I say in this next point here, I approach making videos, podcasts, etc. with the internal logic of a painter. And that's very, very true. So for most of my artistic career, I have considered myself a painter. And for many years, basically throughout all of my 20s, I was a painter who thought that there was no greater thing than painting. I thought that those media people, those sculptured people, it's like painting is the only thing. And look at me now. It's a very, very different world for me. Being kind of starting to consider myself a media artist and really kind of redefine myself in terms of what I think about my practice. But I do think about a lot of things in terms of visual images, constructing visual images. You'll see in a couple of examples that I provide, I will go through how I approach them with the mindset of a painter. But the other thing that I love and the other thing that I studied while I was doing my undergrad degree was writing, creative writing. So that is a bit different, I feel anyway. We talk about writing with painting metaphors, of course. There will be people who compare writing a novel to making a large painting and filling in all the little areas, whereas some people might call a short story a vignette, or like a photograph, or just a brief flick, or a tiny painting. I don't know. There are so many metaphors between writing and the visual that there are connections, but the actual practice and craft of writing every single day is a little, to me, it feels a little different. And so mixing art and writing together is one of my more recent goals for my practice. Since I love both, but for the past couple of years, I found that when I was either writing a lot or I was making images, making art. One usually was affected by me pursuing the other with a particular intensity. So throughout my 20s, I was publishing the odd poem or the odd piece here or there. And only recently have I made the decision, but also practiced writing every single day. So my goal for this project was to find a way to kind of integrate the two of them together in a way that made sense. But I do recognize that this is an ongoing process and it's not easy, since writing is supposed to paint a picture in your mind, and then you have like images put right in front of you, and you are supposed to have this sensory experience with them that is that is based on sight and light and that sort of thing. There's a certain element of comprehension that I feel is taken away when you look at an image. It's just kind of like an almost guttural reaction, whereas with writing and language, you have to sit and comprehend what has been written and process it. So there's I feel different levels of immediacy between writing and making making and viewing an image. So can those two really be combined is a question I have had. I mean, anything can be combined together, but it's to do it in a way that feels tight and succinct, and it's a more difficult thing to do, in my opinion. So that is something that I have been thinking about a lot over the course of this residency, because my proposed project for this residency was to make an interactive graphic novel. So that's been an interesting process, and I'm going to talk about that a bit more in a little while, but I want to share some images with you first of some paintings, just so you can, if you're not familiar with me as a painter anyway, you can get a sense of where I came from. So this work was made all after 2015. I have not put titles in or dates. They're all on my website, but to be honest, I was making this and still working on my project right up until this artist talk, and I was like, you know what, title, whatever, I'm lazy. So yeah, it's somewhere on the internet, but I wanted to just give you a sense of what I was making. So I was combining spray paint and oil paint, two things that you're never supposed to do, but I was doing it anyway. And I was using just this blue glow a lot. A lot of people fell in love with it on the internet because it photographs really well, and it looks fantastic on Instagram. So this is some of the stuff that I was making. And then I went to grad school, and this is some of the images that I started making. To give you a kind of very brief history, I was a Purchase Prize winner of the RBC in 2015. I took some of that money and went to Peru, where I met my partner, and I was inspired by the jungle a lot, but I also didn't want to paint the jungle in Peru because it's not my space. It made more sense to me to try and create a space that kind of captured that lush vibe, for lack of a better word, that atmosphere. So I came back and I started making those paintings, and then I applied to grad school, and it was looking like I was going to end up at the University of Victoria, and I was fine with that. It's a great school. But I was also just like, it's like, do I really want to be here? Like, just, questions run through your head as your life is beginning to unfold in front of you, and you're not sure exactly what plan, like, this is the plan that you laid out for yourself. So I was in that kind of space. And then I discovered after, I think after I accepted that Kelly Richardson was actually moving to Victoria. So I don't know if y'all are familiar with Kelly's work, but she has been based out of England for, well, she was based out of England for a good chunk of her career in Newcastle, and she had moved to Victoria to take a job at UVic because, well, I mean, there's tons of trees, there's lots of nature, and the basis of what informed her work was in Victoria. And uh, I was completely ecstatic. I wanted to work with her, and I got to work with her, which was great. Um, she's a digital media artist, but she also comes from a background in painting, so we had a lot of similarities to talk about, a lot of similar things to think about, and I don't. It's interesting. I think like I started working with gaming engines partly because of her, but I also it just I don't know, things rub off on you. So I wouldn't be surprised looking back if Kelly was the reason that I just started working with digital media. But these are some of the images that I made when I was working with her. These are all, I know that I actually remember the size of these. They're 84 by 84 inches. One of my MFA mates, Connor, he sold them to me. And yeah, I made really big paintings in my last year of university. So these were all based on a single world that I created. And that world was called Arca. And I essentially wanted to just try creating a world like that existed in paintings, kind of like a concept artist, except I don't have the same training as concept artists who train day in and day out to achieve a certain sense of realism and yet stylistic realism, and mostly work for video game companies on sets of movies, that sort of thing. But I still wanted to like just do my best, try and make a world, see what happened. I wanted it to be a process that was fairly organic, and I just wanted to see where the paint would take me and kind of create the rules that allow this world to exist as I was painting. So a lot of the material, like, so for example, the trees, the plants, I basically let the brush and the paint do what it would do. And then I would kind of create rules and myths about this world based on how things just appeared in the painting. So, for example, the background of the painting, you see all these intense drips, and that's from adding solvent to paint and just keeping the canvas standing upright and letting gravity do the work and letting it drip and create all these really neat kind of effects in the background. So I kept that, and that ended up being the sky and the water, and then I would paint on top of it. And just create kind of like I just kind of like let it be, and that's sort of how it evolved. And then like the plants, for example, I and the blue glow. So the blue glow is actually a really good example of how I let the paint dictate everything. So for like there was this blue glow, and the spray paint was constantly recurring. And I read in, I think it was a Scientific America article about plants on different worlds and like what colors they would be. So I was reading on that an F-class star, the sun of an F-class star, that star is so bright that on a planet that orbits it, there might be a greater chance for bioluminescence because it would be a protective film, or there would be some kind of waxy or luminous substance that would protect the plants from the intense heat that is projected from that star. So upon like, using this blue glow in my work, I decided to make this planet have an F-class star. So that heat and that light was incoming, and there was a reason for this kind of like luminous substance in the work. So it was like some backtracking and, just letting things be as they were, and then seeing what happened with the paint. And that blue glow wasn't always present in every single painting, but I was still making rules about so these little things in the middle of the painting here, that's actually the side of my hand. And I pressed it into the paint and solvent, just at the right moment when I was drawing. And I said they were seeds. So this is a plant, a sack of a plant that is holding all of these seeds. So really, that was an interesting process to me, and that's how I built this world called Arca. And it was the basis of my thesis exhibition for my MFA. And so right at the in the last month, or basically into November to April or May, I decided that I had this opportunity to make a podcast. And I'd been listening to a lot of podcasts in the studio, a lot of audio dramas, and I was talking to this guy named Cliff at UVic, and he was saying that, look, there's all this free equipment, state-of-the-art recording studios on campus. And if you talk to the right people, I think you could, get in there, and you could, I don't know. He's like, I don't know what you would do, but it could be great. So I rushed and put a script together. I wrote a script, like a screenplay type script. I got in touch with two students. There were a couple that were interested that reached out, but the professor in the music department that I worked in gave me suggestions of two fabulous students named Will and Kirsten. And Will was in my audio technician and basically running the studio, and Kirsten was the director of the podcast, and she was a theater major with a background or a minor in music. So the three of us together made this podcast and got a bunch of actors who were theater students to act in this podcast. And I basically took all the rules that I had made based off of the paintings and wrote them into this podcast. It was a hard process. It was 10 months of straight work. Even after we had finished recording in May, end of April, early May, I had to go in and sound design everything and edit it. So that was a really big process, but the interesting part of the podcast was that I approached it like a painter in terms of sound design. It felt like, painting and building up different layers of sound. So there was this constant additive and subtractive process of okay, well, this section of the episode is a little too loud. I have to balance the sound here. Maybe it doesn't need all of these atmospheric effects. What is too much? What is too little? What gets the point across without going overboard? I don't know if any of you saw Christopher Nolan's recent film Tenet, but you can't really hear what some of the characters are saying at certain points because there's so much atmospheric sound design that it actually drowns some of the dialogue out. And I thought I was crazy because I was like, I can't hear what they're saying. What is wrong with me? And I went online and I was like, oh no, that's just too much sound design. It's overbuilt. So there was a lot of thinking like a painter, but also like a writer when you go in to edit the scenes. So that was a huge enterprise. That was 10 months of nonstop work. And I somehow managed to also do my thesis, finish my thesis, my paintings and everything. It was a really formative experience of working with other people. And yeah, I decided not to do a second season. The first season is only 9 episodes long, but it was a lot of money to make because I paid the actors, not a lot unfortunately, but I paid the actors, I paid Will and Kirsten, and then I paid a lot of money for sound effects, since I didn't have time really to go and record, do Foley sound effects for the entire podcast, and there were a lot of like kind of sci-fi sound effects that would have been quite difficult to make. So that was a time in my life where I learned a lot about sound editing and sound design, and it's only served me well as I have entered the world of gaming engines and you know, just kind of like script writing and world building. Because this wasn't like a crash course, like, or it was like being thrown into the ocean, and like, you know, if you didn't know how to swim, you just have to swim or you die. So that was what that was like. It was nonstop learning all the time. So wow, on top of that, while I was making this podcast and making these paintings, I also started making videos. And so this is an excerpt or a sample of a longer video called The Last Danceable Transmission, and I originally made it because Kelly was she was putting together a group show exchange with the University of Dundee and UVic. And she was like, look, like, you know, if you're kind of experimenting in this, do you want to try putting something together and see what happens? I was like, sure. It only has to be 3 minutes long. And I already know how to use like editing software. So really I just have to film this space, and then I just edit it and compile it and blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to show a clip of it. My sound should be working this time, and it shouldn't hopefully be muffled, because I know last time I just didn't really, I didn't deal with my sound settings on Zoom. So yes, hopefully this will be a bit better. So, let's see what does this. That's probably a good enough sample of that. That's one of the first videos I've made. It's actually 20 minutes long. This was the piece that was shortlisted for the EQ Emerging Digital Artist Award, and is now part of their permanent collection. So, I mean, that was a big learning experience for me. I struggled with this video so much, like editing the 20 minutes and version when I eventually expanded it. it was just, I guess what I'm trying to say is that was a process, learning a whole new skill set, and yeah, I mean, I'm so thankful it turned out as well as it did. And luckily, with technology like Unreal Engine, you don't have to be a coder to understand how and use the program. There is a lot of drag and drop available to non-coders, and so that was a big thing for me. Um, and it continues to be a tool that I use because that's generally like, I'm still learning. Like, I'm learning how to code. I am learning how to be a better sculptor, 3D sculptor. Okay. I'm just gonna quickly, there's stuff in the chat here. Okay. Oh, this is nice. There's comments. Comments, cues from that video here. Oh, that's my sister, huh? So imagine we transmit gravitational waves. Yes, that's a big thing. So I was super influenced by the trilogy, the Three Body Problem trilogy, and I was kind of just like so enthralled by it that that was a huge kind of like step in world building for me. I actually almost forgot about that trilogy entirely, but it was just so good. Um, and yeah, so it kind of I mean, the Ansible is a fictional device, and that video was basically an invitation to kind of like suspend your disbelief, but also like imagine, like backtrack and think about like where would we have to be as a society for that to even be possible? Like, is it even possible? Probably not. At least like, in the time that any of us would be alive, and then some. Um, so yeah, that's kind of like where that inspiration was coming from. In terms of my videos, I also don't use, like that video, I was really inspired by Myst and Riven, which were games from the early 2000s. So I would actually watch my mom play those games when I was a lot younger, and I was like totally entranced by them. Just watching her do these puzzles, and like I actually have Myst now on my computer, and they're really, really hard. Or maybe I'm just dumb, but like, it's anything is possible. So yeah, that's where that sort of like visual inspiration came from as well. Cinematic, absolutely. Like I love sci-fi films. They're a huge influence to me. I actually remember coming across a photo of my dad holding me as a toddler, and he was watching Star Trek Next Generation. So I don't know. I think like I've been influenced by science fiction at a very young age, and like my dad and I, like one of the topics that we can consistently talk about is science fiction, and we trade book recommendations all the time. So that's a big like aspect of my relationship for me with my dad. And then where can we watch the full video? So that's a little more tricky. So because it is it's an edition. So the video is an edition of, I believe, four. I can't remember what I put down, but it's three or four. And how that works is that I mean, you'd have to buy one of the editions to see the entire thing. So there will only be the 3-minute version available to, just the internet, basically. If I were to show that video in an exhibition, I would be showing the 20-minute version. So that's unfortunately, like, when you're buying and when you're selling video work, that's the way that it is. But maybe one day it will be shown, and I'm not sure when that will be again. Maybe, yeah, maybe it will, maybe it won't. But yeah, so you'd have to buy an edition in order to see the full thing, if not in an exhibition. Okay, so hopefully that answers a couple of the immediate questions. I'm just going to X this, and I'll try and keep an eye on it if there are more questions along the way. So, moving on, I just wanted to like breathe. I'm not going to show all of these videos, like, obviously in their full length. I just want to give you some more insight into what's leading up to the project that I've been making with Factory Media Center. Um, so one big way that I have been beginning to integrate writing with visual elements, my big goal, as I mentioned, is I have been kind of scanning the internet for free resources. And so I was just, I was browsing and just going along and whatever. And I came across this internet archive. It's massive, and it linked me to LibriVox, which is just a library of audiobooks that are in the public, or yes, audiobooks that like recordings of books that are in the public domain. That's what I'm trying to say. So I was browsing. The speakers, like, this is a volunteer thing. Like LibriVox, you just like basically you have to meet certain recording standards, but if you've got a mic and like you've got a voice, then you can more or less record a book and send it to LibriVox, and they'll put it on their website. So they have multiple recordings of all kinds of different books in the public domain. So I was just browsing and I found this really amazing reader, and her name is Karen Savage. And I loved her voice, and I was just listening to her read The Secret Garden by what's her name? Frances Hodgson Burnett. Ugh. That's her full name, I believe. So I was listening to that and I was like, this is amazing. I wonder if, like, what would happen if we were thinking about like this archive of work from the perspective of someone like way in the future. What would that be like? Like, what if an AI was trying to read this book? Or like, what if some kind of machine was trying to read this book? Like, what would that be like? Why would they read it? What would it mean to change the context of these words into a more like contemporary or even future setting? So I set out to try and imagine what that would be like. So this is called The Garden Along the Coast, and again, also built and filmed in Unreal Engine and then edited in Final Cut. So I'm just going to play the beginning excerpt of it. It's almost 10 minutes long, so we'll play maybe the first minute or so.
In each century since the beginning of the world, wonderful things have been discovered. In the last century, more amazing things were found out than in any century before. In this new century, hundreds of things still more astounding will be brought to light. At first, people refuse to believe that a strange new thing can be done. Then they begin to hope it can be done. Then they see it can be done. Then it is done, and all the world wonders why it was not done centuries ago. One of the new things people began to find out in the last century was that thoughts, just mere thoughts, are as powerful as electric batteries, as good for one as sunlight is, or as bad for one as poison. To let a sad thought or a bad one get into your mind is as dangerous as letting a scarlet fever germ get into your body. If you let it stay there after it has got in, you may never get over it as long as you live. So long as Mistress Mary's mind was full of disagreeable things about her dislikes and sour opinions of people, and her determination not to be pleased by or interested in anything.
That's about a minute. Yeah. So, yeah. That's kind of what the work is about. And yeah, it's very blue. I love working with the color blue. It's just it's very soothing to me. It's very kind of it makes me feel things. I don't know. That's probably my painter brain talking. Make it sound like I have like I have lizard brain or something, like painter's brain, but no, that was like a very kind of this work was based on mostly like finding this voice actor who read this work beautifully, and then also kind of thinking about the Secret Garden as this sort of like frontiers land, and also, and basically like how garden, the idea of a garden and being cultivated is kind of like this weird metaphor for taming existence, and then like, and the problems associated with calling a frontier land like a frontier, because like, you know, we might think it's a frontier, but to someone else it's probably maybe not that. So this was kind of like examining the problems with the imagery of the garden, and also and talking about land relative to humanity, and like, you know, just how we act as colonizers. That's maybe not like the best description. Like, I'm trying to sort of break it down a little bit, but at the same time, it's I think it's just like you have to read The Secret Garden to kind of also understand what I'm getting at, because The Secret Garden is for children, in a certain sense, and maybe others it's not, I don't know. I've always thought it was for children. I just kind of like think it's interesting to think about that novel and then recontextualize it in another way. I'm actually doing the same thing right now with another sci-fi book called The Big Time, and it's like this 1950s Hugo Award-winning novel, and it's like kind of really misogynistic, and I'm trying to like take it apart and like put it back together as this interesting recontextualized work with images. That's like my next project on the horizon. So yeah, those are like talking about images of like what is wild, what is cultivated, what is considered frontier, and how that word has like problems associated with it. Even the idea of like the garden, it means that there's wildness or wild nature somewhere else, which is also kind of problematic, because it also invites talk about like native versus invasive species. These are all things I've been thinking about also over the past couple of years in terms of thinking about space and like what belongs there and what doesn't, according to different people and how different people view those kinds of spaces. So yeah, just some things I've been thinking about, and it's coming through in my work. What else? Oh, this one, it looks like a blank screen, but it's actually another work. I will also only briefly show maybe like a minute or two of this one. So this one is called The Wastelands, and it's where I take apart the poem The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot and recontextualize it as kind of like this post-apocalyptic scene, and think about the poem if it was like basically how it like would fit in a future world. So
April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dried tubers. Summer surprised us, coming over the Starnberger Sea with a shower of rain. We stopped in the colonnade and went on in sunlight into the Hofgarten and drank coffee and talked for an hour. Bin gar keine Russin, stamm aus Litauen, echt Deutsch. And when we were children, staying at the Archduke's, my cousin's, he took me out on a sled, and I was frightened. He said, Marie, Marie, hold on tight, and down we went. In the mountains there you feel free. I read much of the night and go south in the winter. What are the roots that clutch? What branches grow out of this stony rubbish? Son of man, you cannot say or guess, for you know only a heap of broken images where the sun beats and the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sound of water. Only there is shadow under this red rock. Come in under the shadow of this red rock, and I will show you something different from either your shadow at morning striding behind you, or your shadow at evening rising to meet you. I will show you fear in a handful of dust.
Okay, so that's the first bit of the poem. I really like that poem. Yeah, so this is available on my website, as is the last one, and also on Vimeo. So if you Google Claire Scherzinger, you will see that come up. No one has, I don't have just the like samples up there, unlike the other one. Okay. I put a list here of people who inspire me because I thought that might be useful in an artist talk. So yeah, I'm gonna go through a few of them. Some of them you might know, some of them you might not. Some of them are writers, some of them are thinkers, and some of them are artists. Some of them are all three. Saskia Olde-Wolbers, she actually is like a big influence on me because I think she does the whole combination of storytelling with images really well. She also she uses that divided screen a lot, so she'll have two images, moving images juxtaposed against each other, and you'll get this kind of sprawling narrative spoken by an actor over her work, on top of these images. So I find her very interesting. Timothy Morton is a big one. The way he talks about the environment, and his big thing is like something called ambient poetics. He talks about this more in terms of ambient music, basically talking about how immersive art can surround us and collapse subject-object relationships. And when that happens, especially with work that is addressing nature and the environment and the destruction of the environment, only then are we really starting to, these are not his words, but like get reasonably close to addressing these issues and maybe like, slowly start making them better. He believes in the power of art, which I really appreciate. And I really appreciate how he talks about the environment and how art can be used as a tool to maybe help save it. There's a lot of academics kind of like in between that, but over the years, as I have come to understand his work a little bit more, a little bit here, a little bit there, that's sort of like part of the essence of what he's trying to get at. There's a couple on here. I'm not going to talk about them all. I mean, Kelly Richardson I've kind of talked about already. Lisa Jackson. She was a visiting artist at UVic when I was there, and her work is incredible. Highly recommend you check it out. She's worked with VR. One of her most famous pieces, famous? I don't know. Beta Ben, First Light. Yeah, it's a really inspiring, just even seeing the still images are amazing, because it's like you gotta have to have the VR headset to experience it. Yes, so there's some painters on here as well. Stephen Appleby Barr, his work brings me joy. He has a real sense of like play and, but just also technical proficiency in his work that just constantly amazes me, and helps me like, makes me feel free to like, kind of dream and be like fantastical with my own work. Katya Novitskova, she shows at KTZ Gallery in Berlin. She does a lot of like projections, like biological organisms that seem sci-fi when she kind of breaks them apart and puts them back together. And she's projecting them onto these like shaped surfaces. So they look like really like almost realistic, like real 3D sculptures, but it's all just like light and projection. Some of the writers that I love, N.K. Jemisin, she's like kind of maybe an obvious one. She's like won the Hugo 3 years in a row for her 5th season, or what is it, Broken Earth trilogy. It's fantastic. Seriously, it's like, I don't know, people are always like, this book is amazing, and I think it was Matt Bain who's like, you gotta read this, and I was like, okay, and I was like, I tried it, put it down, but picked it up and was like, this is the best book ever. So yeah, I highly recommend that, because I do think like she sort of falls in the sci-fi, cli-fi kind of side of things. It's and if you're not familiar with cli-fi, it's climate fiction. So she's kind of approaching that from a fantasy perspective, and it's really interesting. Rebecca Roanhorse does this has this fabulous book called Trail of Lightning, and it's also one of my absolute most favorite books of all time, and highly recommend you check that out. The world building is amazing. And then Kim Stanley Robinson really kind of approaches world building in a very nitty-gritty, detail-oriented kind of way. Like, the characters are great, but he's also like his world building is like looking at economic, political, and social systems, and how he's been more into like cli-fi as of recent years, although he's known for like more science fiction based works like the Mars trilogy. But his work in recent years has definitely focused more towards the climate and imagining the future as like if our currency, for example, was backed by environmental protection and restoration, which I think is a very interesting idea, because he's basically thinking about this capitalist system and like rethinking it entirely. And like, you know, like people say like, you know, like this is the system doesn't work, and it doesn't. But he does offer like very kind of like what I would think, if we continue on the path that we're on, possibly very realistic, not solutions, but like, you know, like more situations that present more problems. That's probably the most interesting, but the best way to put it. So I highly recommend checking out his book, Ministry of the Future, which is his most recent book. So those are some of the books and the people and everything that I have been thinking about lately. And so how has this influenced the work that I have made during my time with Factory? So I'm going to be switching screens in a minute here. I just want to make sure I've gone through everything. I think the next few slides I have are more for like the end of the talk. So where's my mouse? Blah. No. There, we'll just go to the end. I'm going to talk about these things at the end. So let's put that away. Okay, so what I've been making with Factory. You've seen some still images already. And what I'm showing you right now is the story tree that I have been working on for the last number of months. This is a program called Echo Studio, and it is free to use, by the by. It is a really easy drag and drop node building, like story tree building software. So maybe if you're familiar with interactive videos at all, you might be familiar with Twine. Twine is the big one for text. It's also free. But Echo Studio is really good and streamlined for plopping down videos into these various nodes and building an interactive story that way. So what you're looking at is my story tree for this project. So you can see right here, there's 59 video nodes. Not all of them are filled. I still have more to go, which I actually plan to work on after this artist talk. There's 702 paths. Some of them I've edited down. So sorry, maybe I should explain that this that you see right here is a path. So if you're not familiar at all, maybe you're totally savvy, I apologize. If you're not, this is what this is about. So once you, for example, see the video in this node, you'll have an option to go to the next video. And in this case, you can go down here to this part of the story. So there's a lot of paths, and I have been going along and, like, you know, editing them down and maybe adding a couple where I need to. but I wanted you to get a sense of what this looks like, because it is like complex. It's reasonably complex. Maybe to me, who's been working in it for the past couple of months, it's not so complex anymore. I think the really big part for me about this project was, at least the most time-consuming bit, was the filming in Unreal Engine, and then like having to go back, potentially like just filming and reshooting, because what I would do, to explain my workflow a bit better, is I would film a bunch of stuff in Unreal in these sets that I had built, and then go in and edit them, plop some of them into the nodes, and then realize that maybe they needed to be trimmed a little here, or maybe just some of them didn't work at all. And I experienced that a couple of times, and to be fair, it was a totally new workflow process for me, and finding the most streamlined process was a little difficult. So yeah, especially because I made a big project for myself. It was, I might have bitten off, I'll admit I might have bitten off a little more than I could chew here. But I'm almost done, and I consider this very much like, you know, maybe draft 1.5 of maybe hopefully just 2.5, 3 drafts, I don't know. I have to basically go through and play this, and then, you know, just see where it could be edited down a little more, like what isn't making sense. There's a couple of video notes that I would like to reshoot. So I am going to show you some of the clips. I thought I would point out here on this, where it says publishing, I actually suspect by the very end of this artist talk, it will be published. It's been working away, kind of like work on publishing this piece for the past like 3 or 4 hours. So it's almost there. So maybe by the end of this artist talk, like I can post the link to all of you, and you can have a look at what the work in progress looks like. But it is almost there, so I am very happy with that. So you might be wondering as well, like, what does it mean? What do I mean when I say interactive graphic novel? There's a lot of interactive websites out there, and interactive storytelling websites. I was originally going to put this on a website, and I started building it and everything. I actually am not sure now at the end of this project that it needs a website. Because you can basically, once you publish it, you'll get the link. You can embed it on a website, and I'll probably embed it on my own. So it doesn't necessarily need its own storytelling website to go with this video. I'm starting to reconsider that. So let's see if we can, let's see here. I want a good quality clip. So this is going to be actually in a lower quality, this will be lower quality. Yeah, I'm going to go into here so you can get like, it won't have the sound though. Okay, actually I know what I'm going to do. I should have planned this a little bit beforehand, I admit, but we're just going to go into Final Cut, and I will just click on the project or the clip, and then you can see it that way, because then it will have the sound. You'll kind of get a sense then also how I've done some editing. Yeah, it is loading. Okay. Some of the interesting problems I also encountered in this project was storage. I had 2 terabytes of storage, and I thought that would be enough, but no. That was not enough. I had to order a 5 terabyte hard drive the other day, and luckily it got here, but I had to like juggle things around in order to you know, make this possible. It's really interesting kind of like thinking now as a digital media artist, like having lots of storage is something that like you think would be obvious, but it's not something that really comes up until it becomes a problem. So that's interesting. All right, so let's see here. I have all these different project files because I wanted to make a different like kind of file for each one, each clip basically. Okay, so this one here, this is the opening. So this is basically the opening sequence of the video, and it's plopped into the node right now. I just want to make sure that you get the best quality possible. So let's, there. Oh, there. Okay, so basically here, this is where the buttons would appear, but you don't put them in when you're editing. You actually put them in Echo Studio. So the nice thing, I'm just going to exit the full screen here. So the nice thing about Echo Studio, as you can see, like this is one of the buttons that I designed, and I have to add this one here. You can actually customize all the buttons of like that you click on to make the video interactive. So this one will take you to a planet. This one, when it looks like this one, it will take you to another planet. So you can start out this journey by choosing which planet you want to go to. Okay, so you're kind of getting an idea of how it's built. And I'll show a couple more clips because it is still in the throes of publishing. And then I'll talk a little more about the concept of it in detail. But I can tell you right now, so you can see, there's like a couple different worlds that you can choose from. So you have Iona, and you have Hemera, and then you have this little planet here called Pontus, which orbits this gas giant. There's another little like planet here that's orbiting or on its own, but I actually might take it out to make it a little, just to make it these three here, and this big ass little, this giant man. So, let's see here. Loading screen. So let's look at this one. This is a fun one, I think. Oh, this is an even more fun one. So this is exploring this downtown. Pontus is an ocean world, I should say, to give context. Pontus is an ocean world that orbits the big Jovian giant Tartarus. And then Hemera is smack in the middle. It's kind of like Mars in a certain way. And then you have Iona, which is sort of like Earth, sort of. So, Damaris is the main city that you get to explore on the planet of Pontus. And I should enlarge this. So this is where you start out, and the camera kind of takes you in a certain direction, and then you'll get options as to where you want to go. And if there is a little bit of a lag between our screens, like, I apologize for that. That's I'll explain in a minute. A few things I need to correct. Oh, looks like there's more chats. All good questions, okay. Oh wow, there's a lot. Okay, I'm gonna stop that for a minute, just so I can like also answer some of these. So, in relation to your literary take home, here it seems like, yeah. So, this is a good point, and it's so in your relation to your literary take home frontier, it seems that maybe your planets also did not ask to be colonized. Okay, yeah. So. I think it's a really interesting kind of, it's a very important conversation to have and a really interesting one. Yeah, so in the floating planets, there, as far as we know, as the viewer slash participant, we don't know who was there before. We know obviously that there was like, once you like see the different planets, that there is active like flora. And I think it's also a really interesting conversation to have, because right now it's entirely possible there are microbes on other planets, even in our solar system, that we don't know about. And just because they don't use the tools that we use and the language that we use, they're not asking to be colonized either. So like, I think it's important to talk about stories where humans visit other worlds, but also how we like how we carry ourselves when we approach other worlds, because and this is a cause for of my concern, because you have people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos basically having like, just the space race between each other, and I worry about how they're going to approach different planets, and like, what they're gonna do, and how they could potentially just ruin life that already might exist there, because we're so, human-centric. The way that we view the universe is anthropocized. And there are definitely people who are out there thinking like, oh, like, it's just, it's very unlikely that life on other worlds exists. Like, we're gonna do the Drake equation, and it's like, but it's not like, a real kind of like, it's not really like you can't take it necessarily at its word or whatever. There's not really a way to know, but it does matter in the stories that we tell, and doing these thought experiments of how we carry ourselves through the universe, and like what we want, think about how we want to be like. It's I'm kind of just like running through several different thoughts in my head as I tell you this. So if it's not coming out perfectly clear, I apologize. But yeah, I do think it's a probability that humans will live on another planet, likely Mars, maybe not, I don't know, but I think it's an important conversation to have. Yeah. A question here is more on Echo Studio. And then a comment on the wasteland in and of itself is also kind of appropriation, which is an interesting thread in of itself. That's a very that's a good comment. I think like these are great. I love to deep dive into tooling here. Okay, so maybe I'll just answer this question about Echo Studio. Where would the project be hosted? Would it be a distinct program, or would it be hosted on Echo's site? So yes, it would be hosted on Echo's site, like, the finished work. But I would embed it to my website. I actually do that now with Vimeo. A lot of like hosting site, or a lot of websites want you to like, host through Vimeo or YouTube, or like put your video on Vimeo or YouTube and then just drop in a link. So yes, it would be hosted on, and this is my first project as well with Echo. I was doing a lot of research into different kind of storytelling tools, and there was a lot of storytelling tools interactive storytelling tools for journalists. So there's like one called Shorthand. There's another creative one that I mentioned called Twine that is definitely good for creative writers. I was looking for something that could handle video, and this program handles video really well. Yeah, that's what I have to say about it so far. It's got a really good manual as well, and like, really good videos, like how-to videos on how to use the program. So I definitely recommend giving it a try. It couldn't hurt. And there's possibilities on there that I haven't even explored yet, like parallel nodes. So you can like jump between different timelines as well. It's really interesting. So if you're thinking about it, I would definitely recommend giving it a shot. Do you have metadata on all these clips so you can sort them out in your head? I mean, I just kind of keep, yeah. Lots of questions, but great, by the way, thank you. I mean, I just kind of like go along, and I do keep a kind of running tab on the clips. I know the storyline really well. I wrote it out before I started, and I did a whole like world sheet. So what I do is kind of like before I start any major world building project is what is a world sheet. And I'm just going to exit out of this for now. And I just go through the different characters, and I give them all a backstory. I go through the planets, and I kind of like map out what their terrain is like, more or less, and what the main kind of like big qualities of this planet that you'll see in the course of the video. So it's kind of easier for me to map it all out in my head when it is a story. It's not too difficult to keep track of all the clips, because there's actually, I'm sure comparatively, like for someone who's starting out, it's a lot, and it does feel like a lot for me, but I would probably be more worried if it was like hundreds of clips, and then I think I need a better system to keep track of everything. But for right now, it's pretty all right. Would this be published as an interactive video or a video game? This is definitely an interactive video / novel. So I'll go over here for a minute. So when I say novel, I've actually been meaning to get to this part, so it's good that that question came up. I involved a lot of writing in this video as well. So the sort of main objective is to go through this world, and there's no people present. They're all gone. There's just the remnants of the what they left behind, like what they built is left behind for you to kind of pick through and discover. And you do get a certain level of interactivity, but I wanted to keep this still as a video piece that can be experienced. And it's not it's the main goal is not to be like, I want to go here, I need to go here, like I need to, like, you know, open this door and then do this puzzle. It's still a very slow visual sensory experience. And then when you do get to certain parts of the video, like the landscape, there are these sigils that activate, and there's like technology, like advanced technology that will activate, and it will start glowing, and you are taken into a character sequence. So that's like one of these here. There are these character sequences where you get a bit of their story and of what their life was like on these worlds. So that's kind of what it looks like as an interactive novel. I'm flicking through screens a lot, and I do apologize for that. So a good one, these are like not just like short little bits either. These are like, this one that I wrote, it's like 15 minutes long. So you do get like these stories to read. And so my hope one day actually would be to get someone to narrate them, since that would make it more accessible. It would be great. And maybe down the line, that's what will happen. I thought about narrating them, but honestly, like, the sound of my voice is not great. Like, I know what I sound like. I've recorded myself, and it's not going to happen. So I'd really like to get professional voice actors to record these eventually. But for now, I think it will have to be the way that it is. Yeah, versus a video game, I do think the video game, like, there's a lack of slowness to it. And I mean, like, that's not true for every video game, but I like the idea of having a slow kind of meditative work that allows you to take in what you're saying. I find reading books much more meditative than games. Is there a gaming element to this? Maybe, maybe not. I think that's like where you kind of have to think about where your kind of interpretation of a game lies, and like what an interactive video versus a video game is. To me, this is not a video game, but I am influenced by video games to a certain extent. And I will put it out there that I would love to make a video game one day. So, and then it says live and die on other planets. Honestly, like, I don't know what's going to happen to humanity, but I do think we have a very interesting, and I say interesting to, I don't know, not in a positive way, but not in a negative one either. I think we have an interesting future ahead of us. Yeah. So that's just giving you an insight. I can maybe show a couple more clips here. What's a good one? No. So this is, the one I'll show you next is, it was shown partly in the video that I put up, or Christina put up for me in the Factory Media Center window. And so I did, I have to make some edits on this one as well, because there are a couple of things that didn't, that I started doing in later clips that I need to go back and do in this one. And I also made a super rookie mistake, because I was trying to get, like, I was just like, I've got to get this done, I got to get this done. And so the rookie mistake I made, and I have to go back and redo, is in Unreal Engine, I was filming in 35p and, well, 30 frames per second, and this is 25. And I was like, oh, I'm so dumb. rushing, and just like, why didn't I see it? So it's not a big deal to fix. I just have to go back and put it in a file that is 30 frames per second. So that's just another thing to do to get this to where it needs to be. But luckily, not all the clips are like that. So, but this, yeah. So if you did see a little bit of lag, that's why. It's just I need to go back and correct that. Oh, and I should make this bigger. So I also put in the black box to make the text more visible in other clips, so I also have to do that to this too. So right here is one of the sigils that I mentioned. So yeah, so then you can see the glow, and then it will take you into a sequence where you get, you know, a piece of the puzzle, so to speak. So yeah, and then yeah, you may ask. So here it says you may ask one of the following questions, and then you will get like a choice, and then yeah, you'll have some choices as to like, you know, what you can learn, and then you can always go back and learn more. So that's kind of how this project looks, and so you can see there are all these decisions that you get to make. So it is a task. It is a task, but I am proud of the fact that I made all of these clips, and I'm almost done. It's like I have to make a couple of corrections here and there, but it is getting there, and I think it'll be done in like the end of this week. So yeah, that's an idea of like what some of these clips look like. And you have a scope of the project now. So concept. The nitty-gritty, well, not nitty-gritty, but the overarching story. I mean, I'd love to just let you play it and like go through it. But yes, as I mentioned, you are exploring these worlds, and you're kind of uncovering what happened bit by bit, kind of like an archaeologist brushing away the dust. And there's like this technology you don't fully understand, but it's like giving you pieces of the puzzle as you go along. And so as you go along, there are different characters that tell you their life story. And essentially it's examining a story of people leaving Earth for a better life, for going to the system of worlds called the floating planets and trying to start a new life, and the problems associated with that internally, just like, you know, kind of like trying to deal with a colonist mentality, but also trying to get away from the oppression that these people have faced on Earth. And when I talk about oppression on Earth, some of the big problems that I talk about in this work are mining, like rare earth metals, because even as we are going through the Green Revolution, we are taking so much out of the earth in order to make that a reality. So there's that. And then also, as we mine and like, you know, deforest, and we are ruining our food supply, our fresh water, we are ruining all the things that basically give us life. So, and there are a lot of people are obviously affected by this disproportionately. So, you know, I'm very privileged. Like I make, you know, I'm not gonna pretend that I'm not. So, you know, this is obviously an issue that affects other people more than it does me, but I do care about it. So I'm trying to talk about it in the way that I can best make sense of it, but also like, you know, and show empathy towards others concerning this subject, and hopefully try and use what I am good at to convey information about this problem. That's really like what I am trying to do in my practice on a day-to-day basis. And like, you know, sometimes it might fall flat. I get that. Like, you know, not everything is perfect, but those are some of the issues that I'm trying to talk about here. So when these people do arrive on these systems of worlds, like, you know, how are the Earthers trying to control them? And one of the ways is like basically controlling the food supply in this entire system. So I have two characters who are sisters, for example, and they are both living on Iona, and they are farming metals that grow on plants. So I have this like interesting sci-fi visual that like metal, like lithium analog, like some lithium ore analog is growing on these plants, and they are harvesting it. And as they are harvesting it, the only food that they are allowed to eat is what is given to them by the Earthers. They are not allowed to grow their own food for subsistence, which is actually a very common problem in other parts of the world. People are not allowed to grow food for their own purposes, or some problem that even farmers in North America face is that they are so tired and not paid well for their labor that they are often eating terrible food, like junk food, just to get by and like make a living, keep up with their work pace. So those are some of the issues that these sisters are encountering, until one sister decides to rebel and join what I call the seed network, and they disperse seeds from native plants across these worlds to other people to grow and to like allow them to grow them in secret. And then the other sister takes a more kind of like toe the line kind of stance. And it basically shows like how their lives evolve and what their children's lives are like, and how that infects this whole planetary system. So I hope that kind of like describes a bit, like in terms of concept, some of the things I'm trying to get across. And I mean, it's interesting to do it without the presence of people in this landscape. But I don't use people in my landscapes because I think that there's something to be said for the process of uncovering layer by layer. I think that kind of allows for a slower immersion rather than just someone being like, this is what I think, this is about this. When you are kind of forced to go through a process, I think that allows for maybe a better slow immersion, like slow boil, and allows you to kind of like comprehend and think about the information a little bit more. So a lot of my work is a bit slower in duration and isn't terribly quick and that sort of thing. It takes a little bit of time to get through it, but I think it's worth it. I think kind of like sitting and contemplating a piece of work or a novel is really important. So that's why I've called it as well an interactive novel, rather than just like a straight up interactive video, which it also is, but it is very much as well a novel, or a novelette if you want to get technical, because I'm pretty sure it's not more than 20,000 words, but maybe it is, I don't know. I have not counted. So I'm just going to go back to this for a few more moments, and I'll take more questions as well, maybe just after I'm done this bit here. I just wanted to talk about a couple of things that I thought were interesting, maybe to share with all of you. I don't usually talk about these things in my practice, these elements anyway. I'm just gonna hold on here. Close this chat window and I'll get back to it in a minute. Okay. So my practice, basically, what has it been like during this residency to do this? And then like how does my normal life kind of fare in comparison. And this is also an image, by the way, on the right of Hemera, and its North Pole. So there's like all these different kinds of plants, and like you can get an idea in this picture of what that landscape looks like, by the way. So my practice day to day, while I was doing this residency, this is more like just in general, like my hours sort of shifted around as I did this residency. But as a general sort of thing, I read for 2 hours. I start writing around 9 a.m. So I am writing a lot more. In fact, the piece that inspired this work, it was a short story, and it's going to be published in a webzine, I think, in the fall. So that was fun. That was nice, like nice news to hear. It was my first sale, like the first short fiction piece I've ever sold, because I've only up until this point, I think, sold poetry. So that was a real kind of benchmark for me. So after I've started writing, I'll take a walk in the morning with my partner, and then partway into the afternoon, I'm still writing. Like we'll eat lunch at some point, and then I'll do some cleaning and house maintenance. And in the spring, summer, we're gardening a lot. So that's also part of what has really deepened my appreciation for plants, for ecosystems, and also just like, thinking about the philosophy of gardening a lot more. I've read a lot of books on gardening versus farming, and like, just Michael Pollan is actually a really good, he has a whole book dedicated to the philosophy of gardening. Another really good book I would recommend is Breeding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. She's got a doctorate in botany, and she's written the series of personal essays and her relationship with plants, how she teaches botany, combined with traditional indigenous knowledge. I highly recommend that book. It is beautifully written, and it's really informative. And yeah, so another book that I have been reading, and just gardening and that sort of thing. Late afternoon, I will make a drink. Like I'll usually oscillate between like a beer or tea, or I don't know, maybe both. And then I keep writing, or I begin working and playing around in Unreal Engine, and then we have dinner. I hate cooking. My partner cooks, and I'm so grateful. So we have dinner, and I continue working on Unreal, or I'll answer emails and work on applications. So in the grand scheme of things, during this residency, I was definitely doing these things, but I was working more in Unreal Engine. But I thought it might help to give you an idea of like what my day looks like. I am super, again, privileged to have a partner who is very supportive, and luckily earns enough money that I don't have to currently work. I'm also in the States, so like sorting out my work permit has also been a nightmare. But yeah, a few things I've taken away from this residency. One great thing was I think I actually discovered what I might want to do more seriously as a career. Aside, like, art is a career, like it is. If you're an artist, you will definitely have a career. But something that would actually earn more money. I think I want to write for video games, and I know that's like a lofty thing to say, since I have said I haven't played a lot of video games. But after I'm done this video, I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna play some video games. I really enjoyed writing this whole like interactive novel. I also have been to a science fiction. I was part of the Science Fiction Research Association's conference a couple years ago. I was a speaker there, a lecturer, and I also heard some lectures, and I listened to people who have degrees about science fiction and video games talk about this. And just like, problems facing the industry, lack of representation, and like, you know, storylines about, you know, just believable, I don't know, just like better written characters. Yeah, that's a whole thing to unpack for sure, but I think I would really like to start writing for video games, and I think that this project was a step in realizing what I need to do to get there, and that made me really excited and really hopeful about maybe even like pursuing that as a career and working with things that I love working with that would earn me some money and healthcare since we're in the States. A better handle using Unreal Engine, a better sense of scale, how a universe operates. This is an interesting one because I was talking to my partner the other day, and we were just talking about Neil deGrasse Tyson's talk. He was on a podcast and talking about the measurements and the data that they're getting on how fast the universe is expanding. And I mean, it's all relative. Like to us, like we will be so dead by the time this is an issue. It's like it's not really an issue, but it's expanding so rapidly, and they expect it if, like, again, if the like it depends, but like I would believe their numbers. They believe that the universe is expanding so rapidly at such a fast pace that it will one day overtake gravity, possibly. And yeah, like we're just going to expand, like it will outdo all the forces of nature that we understand, not that we fully understand gravity yet. But I compared it, when I was talking to my partner, I compared it to using Unreal Engine. So I was saying that when you make a world bigger and your objects are bigger, you need to increase your camera speed. Otherwise, you will be going so slow. It will look like you're not moving. And in that moment, I was like, that's a really interesting comparison to thinking about the universe inside this gaming engine. And just like, you know, relative movement, relative scale and mass, it's like they have simulated these elements so well in a gaming engine. And so it really just, again, to the next bullet point, reaffirmed my belief that we're probably living in a simulation. Another huge thing to unpack, but, you know, it's something I've pretty much always believed, but it just, when I've had doubts, I was like, oh yeah, we're probably living in a simulation. It also brought up things that I'm unsure about and where my work fits in this grand world of art making. I know that using like a lot of sci-fi tropes necessarily isn't like fine art to some, but like whatever. It's like, I don't know what to say to that. It's just like you make what you make, and like you should be critical of it, but you also should just make what you make if you really enjoy it. So we all have doubts, and I have doubts, but this project was fun, and it still is fun. It uses all the tools that I have set out to learn, and I have learned more about those tools in the process. So I think this residency is definitely one of the best residencies I have done. And I really, as I kept this talk off, I really just want to, again, say thank you to Factory, thank you to T and John and Christina, to Jessica. Thank you all so much. Like, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your support, your interest. It means the world to me. So thank you. And I am going to stop sharing my screen now. Woo, that was a lot.
It was a lot. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
That was incredible. It's always really captivating to listen to you talk about this project and hearing about it within the scope of your entire practice. I see so many visual parallels to your paintings, and also like thematic parallels that I might have not understood prior to listening to you speak about it, which is why I really, really love artist talks. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
We have a few a few comments and questions that I want to go through before we sign off here. Okay. So Flourish said, thank you for the info on the platform in reference to Echo Studio. I'm always excited about new platforms, but I'm nervous about how fickle they are and about platform stability.
Yes.
Free today, acquired tomorrow, dead next week, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very fair assessment. And I mean, I think it's I don't know. I'm glad to have all the clips. Like that's the thing. I am glad to have all like the raw clips and everything. It's definitely more challenging to assemble without Echo Studio. When it's published, I'll know a little bit more about their whole process, like, you know, what it's like to possibly even try downloading it. And I'd be happy to I'll share that information as it becomes available. Yeah, it's I mean, I don't know, like I this, you're totally right. This could be like here today, gone tomorrow. But at the same time, it's kind of just like, you know, it's a great tool, and like, you know, you just kind of, I feel like you just sort of have to like leap in at a certain point and just kind of like roll with the punches. If it were to be deleted, I do at least think that there would be an option to recover your work before it is gone. So there are a number of videos that have been made. Like I looked through their library to see like, you know, what has been done in the past with this program. And they do have like a decent library of people making things with this tool. So, I mean, like, yeah, I feel like at least there would be some kind of recourse or you know, kind of like back and forth as to how to recover your work before they went away. But that is a very good concern. Definitely something we should always consider, for sure.
Mm-hmm. I always believe in like the creators of open source technology out there. I feel like they're on our side.
I did, yeah. And I was surprised this program was free to use. I was just like, this looks so good. There must be a cost. But yeah, no, it's I do think it's a technology that people recognize is a little bit more accessible, like more people want to use it. So, I mean, it isn't terribly difficult to use, so why not? Yeah, I think it's just becoming more popular as time goes on. So there'll be more, there will be more tools available.
Definitely. Harold said, galleries and museums will have an interesting time archiving content on third-party platforms. We'll figure it out.
I don't know, like, that is a good, like, yes, you're right, sort of. Yeah, I have been very hard pressed to encounter a space that deals, though, like, who cares about archiving, at least like smaller galleries at this point in my life who care about archiving work by an emerging artist. That's not an excuse to, like, you know, not make like archival work and have stuff that's hosted on a third-party site. But I mean, like, what I don't know, like, what people would necessarily expect. At the same time, I feel like as we all move online, like, you know, that's just going to be something that is there in the archives of the internet. So like, I don't know. I'd also like, I'm a little bit wary of museums and galleries now. Like I haven't shown in a physical gallery space. Well, I just kind of did. I take it back. But I haven't really shown work otherwise in a physical gallery space in quite some time. I also think that is gonna, like, that will change. There will be many more virtual gallery spaces. I mean, I think about, I was listening to, thanks for closing the door. I was listening to a podcast, Planet Money, about all these artworks, like paintings that exist in these free port zones. And they're essentially just big warehouses where people keep work so that they're inside this kind of like tax haven. And nobody sees the work. Like, people buy work all the time and it just disappears and it sits in this warehouse. So, I mean, like, you know, if there's not an opportunity to see this work, like, does it make a, like, why make it? So at least on a third party site, sure, it's like not ideal, but I mean, at least like people can find it. At least it's like, you know, I can like host it through my website. At least, like, you know, it's available to so many different people I might not have ever encountered. I'm not so concerned with archiving it. It's like, at least it's visible. Whereas, like, I think about paintings and, like, you know, things that are just like, you know, lost in the depths of like a warehouse forever. And it's like, yeah, like, so what if it's archival, like, you know, or archived? I mean, I don't know. I don't put that much stock in like museums and like physical gallery spaces anymore either. But that's just me. It might mean more to someone else. So, I don't know, that was a long, sprawling answer to something that is a legitimate concern, but at the same time, it's not as huge a concern for me. Things change, like, work doesn't last forever. So, like, money's not even real, so why does this matter? Like, why does it matter? I don't know. It's a good question, though, and I agree that it needs to be asked.
Definitely. I think artists, maybe just myself, this is a me thought. It's equal parts egotistical and equal parts the love for preservation, I think, to want artwork to last forever. And I find myself on either side of that argument, where the concept of forever is so intangible that, like, why should work last forever? But at the same time, I love learning about art that has been archived, that wouldn't have been visible and accessible otherwise. So it's interesting to pull media art into this realm and conversation, because it is so new, but it's also so prevalent, especially these days.
I think there will be, I mean, I don't know if I'll, like, who knows who will do it, but I do think, like, you know, that the way that we're archiving, like, the internet already, I feel is fairly accessible. Like, I use, I love going on Wayback Machine and looking at stuff. And it's been, like, easy enough to find certain things, other things, you know, that they just won't appear. But yeah, I think that there is, if we want to archive something, like, I think it is also easy enough to build a tool that will give us that, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, that ability to do so, wherever it might be hosted. I think it would be easy enough to call or text or whatever, email these people up and be like, hey, is there, like, you know, this is a concern. I'm sure these people also have the same concerns. I think that's something whoever is working with the internet and digital media in any kind of format is considering that right now, and where we might be going.
Definitely. Yes, Harold said, archiving arises for us as artists. Maybe you embrace the idea that they will not last beyond X number of years. All of our bits and bytes will get erased when the universe expands to that point.
Yeah, yeah, so true. I know, like, and I think, like, I should be fair. Like, that does come from my, I think, a very privileged position of me to say that, where, like, you know, this isn't, like, I don't have to rely so much on, I don't have to worry about that so much, you know? Yes, like, I worry about my work lasting and it being seen, but, you know, I don't have to worry about so much about whether I sell a piece and, like, what the archival quality is like. You know, when I do sell a piece, it is something that immediately pops into my consideration, but, you know, it's not something I necessarily have to think about all the time. So I should, like, I do want to call myself out there a bit, but like I also am dubious of that as like whole process as well. So yeah. Anyway, that's just rant is done.
We have another question. I would love to hear you go into the filming process. Is it a matter of you programming the movement of the camera and then capturing the program itself? Or do you manipulate the camera manually? Or capturing the image with an external capture software?
Yeah, so good question. It is a mix of both. So to get into the filming part, I am like you bring in a camera, like they have a camera tool in Unreal, and you basically set up like an animation sequence. It's how a lot of like in a video game, how a level sequence is done is like they bring in the camera and like you control the different points like X, Y, and Z, and you make keyframes. So you adjust the numbers as you go along, and like you like the numbers change, and like then you press transform, and like that number is recorded. So that is where the camera will be and where it will be facing in at a certain period of time. So it is a little easier to kind of visualize in Unreal because you can pilot that camera. So you're basically looking through the viewpoint of the camera when you are filming and putting down these keyframe points. So essentially I'm just like, you know, toggling numbers around to get the exact position of the camera. And when it looks good, I hit transform and it puts that down. And then you do this along a timeline, and that's how that happens. So when you want to go and export that file, you do have a couple of options. For me, I mean, again, like as I was saying, storage was a big issue for me. And to also like, because I'm on my Mac right now, but I have a PC where I do all my Unreal work. And to transfer a file, just even through Google Drive, it was like so many gigabytes for an uncompressed file. And I know the quality would have been better, but it was taking so long just to transfer a file. I was like, this is not worth it. So I like maybe I'll like work with bigger files in the future, especially now that I am upgrading my storage a bit. But yeah, that's I went in, I did some files that were like, you know, exported from Unreal, but I also did use a screen capture software, not really, I don't know, software. It's PCs come with Xbox Game Bar, and they have a pretty good recording device. I found that at times that the lag though was a little more noticeable. So I would like, you know, export a file and like, you know, play around with that. So there are options for that. It's just like, you know, I don't know, you're dealing with so much information. If you can't afford the storage to back it up, you're kind of screwed. So, and I mean, like my 5 terabyte hard drive was like $100+, I think, around that. So yeah, storage can still be very expensive. Like 5 terabytes is a lot, but at the same time, it does add up really fast. Especially if you have other files on your disk that you need to store or whatever. So yeah, it's a mix of both. I think, yeah, if you were planning to try this at all, like I would try both and see what happens to you, because the compressed files were they weren't very good. So yeah, something to consider.
Thank you. We have some thank yous, but our last comment is thank you for breaking down your routine for this talk. Artists and developers and designers of all mediums have a lot to talk about vis-a-vis crunch culture. It's brutal.
Yeah, I read a bit about that, and like that is intense. I like working on this stuff because it's what I like to do, and I don't actually have the same constraints as someone who's working in tech or in gaming or whatever has. I totally understand that. I hope that, like, people in that industry, hopefully eventually like are able to take time for themselves and like, have outside hobbies. I, in my 20s, and I'm like, it wasn't super long ago, like I'm 30 this year, but I mean, I worked all the time in my 20s, and I really wish I had like developed an outside hobby or been more balanced, I suppose. I think I would have been a lot happier. I think I wouldn't have been so wrapped up in like just what success meant. And yeah, I think, yeah, that big crunch is a very real problem. And also being in the States, like people are workaholics here. People work so much. It's, uh, it's normal and it's unfortunate. Um, and I feel bad for that. Um, so if I ever end up in the gaming industry, I'm definitely going to try and advocate for just a more balanced lifestyle, like, and just exercise, eat well, do other things. So yeah, that's a really good comment, and I'm glad I brought that up.
Definitely. That's all from the chat, but it was a really engaged talk.
Yeah,
I'm going to
thank you
invite
so
you.
much for all the comments and questions. That was awesome.
Definitely. I'm going to invite the chat to like send Claire more comments and questions to their Instagram or website, because eventually they'll be able to see the finished piece in a few weeks or so.
I am hoping by the end of this week. That should be all ready to go. But yeah, there's not too much more to be done, luckily. It's, kind of like smoothing out the rough edges. So yeah, hopefully by the end of this week, I anticipate that being up. But yeah, if there are questions at any time, I would be happy to answer them. I might not have a good answer, but I will try.
That's all we can ask. I'm really excited to experience this program. Thank you so much for working alongside Factory to make it happen, and for hosting the workshop last week and this great artist talk. If we want to see more of Claire's work, their film is still screening in Factory Media Center's window from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. At least for another week or so. And we'll be sure to share all the information of how you can access the interactive videos when it's released. More thank yous in the chat. Thank you so much, Claire.
Thank you.
Any final thoughts?
Ooh, I mean, read sci-fi, garden, and live life, and be safe. Where I'm sure mask wearing is pretty decent there, but yeah, stay safe, wear a mask, and I'm really appreciate everyone taking the time to listen to me ramble.
Those were some great thoughts. All right, we're going to sign off now. Thank you very much for joining us, everybody. Follow Factory Media Center for updates on Claire's project and for the next residency call, so you may